The second generation GS model, which will be discussed for 6 years, was the winner of the American Reliability Rating compiled by the J.D. Power Consumer Research Center. It is curious to calculate how much the content of the prize horse will cost. But first you need to spend money on buying it. For the GS 300 of 2001, model code 160, they are now asking from 570,000 rubles. For restyled cars, 590 to 680,000, and the GS 430, model code 161, costs about 673,000 rubles. As of January 2008. Expensive, but in comparison with German classmates it is quite acceptable. Moreover, the Lexus, even in the basic configuration, is very richly equipped, from the helpfully retractable steering column, which facilitates boarding and disembarking, to the music-loving acoustics of the native Nakamichi audio center. The rear of the multi-link is quite durable, but with regular overloads, get ready to change the hub bearings after 60,000 kilometers, and after 70 to 100, the levers assembled with ball and silent blocks. Its sound, however, sometimes spoils the unpleasant creak of the instrument panel. Many owners complain about this, but there are also satisfied owners of quiet specimens. But when trying to hang diagonally, the Lexus really cries with panels, but there is no talk of noticeable distortions, let alone wedging the doors. This indirectly indicates sufficient rigidity of the power cell of the cabin and promises good protection in a collision. Disease of the elderly GS, this copy is 1998, 135,000 kilometers, flowering of the door flanging and lagging seals. Do not be lazy to cover them with silicone grease. According to the usual Euro NCAP crash test, the model was never tested. After all, the share of sales of the second generation GS in Europe, even in good years, did not exceed 7%. Most of the cars settled in the American market, and it was inevitable to meet the cube overseas. The Institute for Highway Traffic Safety, IIHS, stated the highest rating for riders, G. The idle was spoiled only by increased loads on the driver's right leg and foot, grade A, one position worse. In addition, during the rebound, the dummy hit its head on the roof rail, but the likelihood of a concussion turned out to be low. All motors, pictured 3.0L, are very reliable and, apart from consumables, ask for almost nothing. Don't skimp on candles. Cheap ones do not last long, and changing them is not easy. You need to disassemble part of the intake tract. In regular operation, there is only one headache with the body: regular washing, and not only for the sake of external gloss. From the chemicals that are poured over our roads in winter, corrosion may appear on the lower flanging of the doors already in the 5th or 6th season. It is important to keep them clean. At the same time, it is useful to cover the lower door seals with silicone grease so that they do not freeze to the threshold and therefore do not tear. These places are like an indicator of care. When choosing a used car, we inspect them first. But you can ignore small chips on the hood. For older GS, caulking is almost the norm, as well as souring of the lower knee of the telescopic antenna on the rear wing. On the automatic tensioner there are marks for the maximum elongation of the V-rib belt. However, more often it requires replacement from old age, when the rubber is covered with cracks. Cars from America sometimes look more well-groomed, but appearances, as you know, are deceiving. Often they leave their homeland due to various road and natural troubles and come to us after a serious repair, the traces of which are sometimes difficult to detect. It's better not to skimp on dealer diagnostics, no matter how expensive it is. Besides, it's difficult to check the bottom and the condition of the units under it without a lift. The ground clearance is small. The hydraulic fittings of the machine often turn sour from our salt. To avoid this, treat them with anti-corrosive and, most importantly, fill the gap between the tube with it. From below, sometimes there is a lack of a plastic aerodynamic body kit. It is often lost on potholes. With runs over 100 to 120,000 kilometers, the rear oil seal of the engine often sweats. As a rule, before a plentiful leak, it will stretch another 20 to 30,000 kilometers, but you still have to change the cuff. At the same time, it can be difficult to disconnect the hydraulic pipes of the machine. They grow together, with fittings from corrosion. Therefore, without waiting for repair, we recommend cleaning and treating the joint with anti-corrosive agent. The main thing is to replace the dirt in the gap between the tube and the nut with it. The brake pump simplifies fluid replacement. With the ignition on, we press the pedal. You need an assistant or a stick rested in the seat, and unscrew the bleeder valve in the rear mechanism. The rest of the automatic transmission is quite reliable. Dealers do not recall serious breakdowns, but it's not worth bringing them to the attention. We change the oil at least 80,000 kilometers. With an aggressive driving style, it can darken, smell of burning, and require an earlier replacement, which we recommend with recirculation. Dealers use a special setting for this. A complete replacement is also useful for cars whose mileage is in doubt, or Americans, their oil is often not the first freshness. Front suspension double wishbone. Ball bearings, stabilizer struts, and silent blocks, with careful operation, easily nurse 150,000 kilometers. Motors are generally very reliable. All mechanical failures occur due to the illiterate replacement of the timing belt. Here it is important not only to catch the marks on the pulleys, but also to correctly install the clutch of the VVT mechanism on the camshaft, which changes the valve timing. Such a responsible job should not be trusted to just anyone, especially since it is rarely required on 2JZ engines, inline 6, after 100,000 kilometers, and on 1UZ FE and 3UZ FE V8, 4.0 and 4.3 liters, respectively, after 150,000. True, the replacement period was recently equalized, 100,000 kilometers, in accordance with the new service menu for Russia, explaining the reduction in the interval for the V8 by more difficult operating conditions. We advise you to accept the innovation as a law. After all, a broken belt is fraught with expensive repairs. But the stabilizer bushings begin to tap after 35 to 40,000. Fortunately, changing them is not difficult. The part is cut, we just put it on the bar. The engine radiator does not last long with us. Its plastic tanks crack, although this defect cannot be called massive. By the way, Lexus is not alone in this. On many other cars, the same problems occur, as we wrote about in the previous articles of the column. The mutation of plastic, according to all dealers, is caused by anti-icing reagents, and, alas, no one has yet come up with a universal antidote. One thing remains, to monitor the temperature regime of the engine. The trunk has eyelets, straps, and a mesh for securing luggage. The only pity is that the kinematics of the loops are not thought out. They eat up a decent part of the volume. But our fuel as a whole was to the taste of the engines, unless, of course, you run into an obvious poison with an excess of metal-containing additives that kill candles. It's a shame when a fresh set starts to mope after 10 to 15,000 kilometers, because it is not easy to change it. To get close to the candles of the central cylinders of the 6, it is necessary to remove part of the intake tract. On the V8, although the work looks easier, the candles are more expensive, because there are a couple more of them. You can delay the replacement to the prescribed 40,000 kilometers, if you're lucky, up to 50 to 60, if you avoid dubious gas stations. This increases the chance to save nozzles from tarring. However, their flushing is required infrequently, on average, after 60 to 80,000 kilometers. There are almost no other problems with the motors, except that by 200,000 kilometers the poly V-belt tensioner roller sometimes starts to howl, which can be changed separately. But silent blocks of the rear suspension are not sold separately, only assembled with levers. The term of their replacement is highly dependent on the loads. If you neglect the instructions, be prepared to fork out for the lower levers after 100,000 kilometers, and for the upper ball joints, they also come complete with levers after 70 to 80,000. With careful operation, all elements of the multi-link serve 160 to 180,000 kilometers or more. Conditionally weak points are hub bearings, which can hum after 60,000 kilometers, and anti-roll bar bushings, in which knocking is possible up to 30,000 kilometers, but more often they reach 40 to 50,000. Their counterparts in the front suspension serve the same amount, for which other breakdowns are rare, of course, if you do not abuse its capabilities. The average service life of the front brake pads is 30,000 kilometers, the rear ones, 35 to 40,000. If you like to light up, get ready to change them much more often, respectively, after 10 to 15 and 15 to 20,000. On average, there are enough discs for 3 sets of pads, but earlier replacements also occur when, during warping, the residual thickness does not allow them to be machined. There are no other problems with the brakes, but remember about the feature of bleeding the system. For example, in case of replacing a hose or fluid, due to the presence of ABS combined with TRC and VSC, traction control and electronic stabilization system, we bleed the rear circuit with the ignition on and the pedal press brakes. The front one, as usual, by gravity with air pressure in the brake reservoir. As you can see, even a robust model has weaknesses. However, there are so few problems that, perhaps, the Lexus GS in its class can be taken as a standard, although not cheap in content. History of the model. 1997 in January, at the Detroit Auto Show, Lexus introduced the HPS concept car, which a couple of months later became the production model of the second-generation GS for the Japanese market, Toyota Aristo. Body type, sedan, factory index started at 16. Petrol engines, P6, 3.0L, 168 kilowatts per 228 horsepower, or 161 kilowatts per 219 horsepower, compression ratio 10.5 and 10.0, respectively, V8, 4.0L, 216 kW/294 HP rear-wheel drive, A5. 1998 P6 petrol engine, 3.0L, 163 kilowatts per 222 horsepower. 1999 American Institute for Highway Safety, IIHS, crash test, highest G rating for a frontal impact. 2000 V8.4.3L petrol engine, 208 kilowatts per 283 horsepower. 2001 restyled grille, rear lights with smooth glass, no lens, aluminum rims around the instruments, a shiny emblem in the center of the steering wheel. Changes in the color scheme and texture of the upholstery. 2004 third generation model introduced.